It wouldn't make it down.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not going away.
Yeah.
You know, folks, I live here and I want to get stuff done. Yeah. Thank you.
It's zero on Maple Road. Yes. Zero.
Did you find? Did it find?
It didn't.
Well, if it-
Okay, why don't we start?
I don't think it'll read off the end.
It won't.
We ready to go, Bob?
Well, you got there on one, I assume.
Yeah. Close.
All right.
Have a forum.
And this is the,
Letters is here, Mr. Gerhard is here, Mr. Patterson is here, Mr. Massey is here, Mr. Dixon is here. Holbein is here, Mr. Maderas is here. Giles is here, and we have a board member, Mr. Atwood, Matthew Atwood. So, he has joined us. Matthew, we just take 1 minute, right, your experience and your new way for being here.
I'll give you a minute.
For the chair.
Experience my doing. I'm excited to be here. Excited to.
Well, we're very pleased to have you on board. I looked over your resume. We're delighted to have you on board. So thanks for volunteering. All right, this is the regular meeting of the Warren Planning Board, Monday, July 26, 2021. It is 7 p.m. We have under the Waterfront Overlay District Development Plan Review, which relates to zoning ordinance Article 26 rather. There is nothing there. For public hearings, we are looking at dimensional variances, Article 13, Section 32-77, Warren Zoning Ordinance, AP 16, Lot 332, 0 Maple Road. The owner is John Barker. The applicant is Jeffrey J. Kirkman. Bob had indicated to me that.
Mr. Chair, the listener's position is that this project does not meet the scale of development for the unified development review. So we will just be taking up the site plan review, making recommendation of zoning on the dimensional variances and the application of formal dimensional relief.
Given that, we would skip to an approval of the minutes, since the site plan is number 7 on the agenda.
Big one is called meeting order.
Let's call the meeting to order. The meeting is now in order. But everyone received the minutes. Rhonda sent those out last week. Any changes or revisions to those? Not hearing anything, I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes as were. Jim Patterson made the motion, a second. Now we have it. Andrew, sorry, say that out loud. It's also new, you know, the being in the flesh, you know.
It's also new.
I can't go for, you know, a Coke on the side. Eat the cat. So under new business, it's a site plan approval or review, really. I mean, is this an approval of the site plan or a review of the
A
site
review
plan?
of the site plan, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need planning for it, but I think it's important because of the non-dimensional relief that's required, that for you to make a recommendation to the zoning board, that you understand what's happening in the existing non-conforming lot. Any house that is being constructed on this lot needs some type of dimensional relief. In my opinion, I think that the scale of what the applicant is proposing is legitimate and reasonable. Here, you can speak to it. You have a copy of the site plan. You see the constraints.
And if, just identify yourself, sir.
Microphone. Address.
Yes, good evening, board members. My name is Pedro Almeida. I'm actually Jeff Kirkman's son-in-law, and I work with the architectural company in Brockton, Mass. And I'm from 2300 Wellington Street in North Dayton, Mass. As well. And
The floor is yours.
all right, perfect. Thank you. So I believe you all have copies of the plans that were submitted. So Jeff has been looking to move into the area, and he found this lot on Maple Road, and he was looking to purchase it. And unfortunately, during the purchase process, he found out that it was a non-conforming lot. So he'd like to still continue with this project and be able to purchase the lot and build a.
Just a second. Bob,
Sure.
can you move the podium? Just sort of, yeah. Thanks.
So, as I was saying, unfortunately, the lot is non-conforming, but he would like to try to see if he could still be, able to build his future residence there. So there are some constraints, obviously, with a lot size. The buildable area is fairly small, and part of the buildable area is encroached by the 100-foot setback of wetlands. So we're basically looking for some relief in the dimensional setback. And
Just maybe talk about the side yard.
sure, absolutely. So on the side yard, as you know, there's a 30-foot setback. Currently, the proposed garage would be within a 10-foot setback from that side yard. And the rear lot, which requires a 60-foot setback, that same garage would infringe on that 60-foot setback and cut it down to about 45 feet or so. The front yard or the front setback, we'd be able to easily maintain that, and as well as the other side yard setback, although the wetland setback infringes on that. So we'll definitely be able to stay away from that 100-foot setback as well.
Was there a reason that you decided to go back the 72 feet from Maple Road? Clearly, the required setback is 40 feet. You're going back 72 feet. In doing so, you shrink up the rear setback.
Yeah, unfortunately, this site plan does not currently show, but there was a preliminary septic design that was going to take on this front area, so we're probably would like to maintain that septic in that front area and move the residence a little further back so we wouldn't conflict with the septic design.
No work was done on that septic.
No, it was just the preliminary proposed septic design that the owner had done. And keeping that in mind, because that would be the best location for that septic, we would have to push our residents further back.
Move the septic to the rear, then you're gonna have to get a variance.
Correct. And also, because of the wetland setback, that would really limit the width of the home. So the closer we bring it to the street, the narrower that front facade would have to be. And I do have some conceptual preliminary elevations. So this would be the front elevation, which as it stands would be about 48 feet in width. And the garage would be set back. So the proposed building is mainly a long rectangular shape.
Do you have a site, I don't think you do, a plan of where the other houses in the neighborhood are relative to this? I know there's one on the corner, but I'm wondering, given the setback of 72 feet, what is the relationship of the back of this house to the houses on Dulcet Road? To the, on your map, it'd be to the left.
I am not too familiar with those locations. I do know that there's a home over to the left here on this side,
Right,
but it's
that's the one on the corner of Twisted and Maple.
correct.
It would be helpful to have a site map, Bob, I don't know, in terms of the relationship of this house to other houses. I'm familiar with the area. I'm thinking that it's probably along the backyard of, or the side backyard of that house on the corner. I'm just wondering if it,
Yeah, I think there's a home with my hand generally in this area, but I'm not sure how close it is.
This property is to the just the west side of Maple Road or near butter. Is that correct?
I believe so. So there's the corner lot, which is to the left, and this would be the,
I don't know, I'm wondering about this house here.
Excuse me, where?
yes.
So where do you expect to put the septic system?
So the preliminary design that was done by the owner of the lot places the septic system on the front side of the lot, and the well would be to the
You know,
to
you're
the
gonna
re-
have to get DEM approval of the septic system.
yeah, correct. I think that exercise was done to show that the septic system would work in this lot.
Sewers and water are big problems out in this area.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that whatever DEM approves for water treatment is going to dictate
Where they
where
put
the
it.
house is going to go.
Yeah.
Because in my sense is that as you get to the southerly side of the property, sort of go down towards the water, they're not going to be necessarily line. I think that's why they have the system on the Maple Road, that's the highest rise.
For the information of the board, we were just looking at a satellite map and plat map rather of the area. And this house lot, while non-conforming, seems to end at the end of the property on the corner, which is currently unoccupied. It's a house that's been neglected for years. It's really a damn shame. Whole nother issue. But it's a house that no one has lived in for at least 5 or 6 years. Yeah, longer, I think. The concern, I think, that I was trying to come up with was, what is this house in relation to the other houses on Twizzler Road? And it looks to me as if you're not behind another house except for this one that's on the corner.
We just scaled it, it's about 100 feet.
Right. I'm was wondering how it was in the 2 houses that are occupied, beyond that one on Twizzler Road.
This lot does not encroach any farther to the south than that corner.
Right. And that's helpful to me in terms of understanding how it fits in within the neighborhood. A reasonable expectation to have that. I was concerned that the 72-foot setback would push you over. Honestly. Okay. And clearly the septic, given the wetland, it's the corner of the exterior porch is right on the line, clearly. But a 100-foot setback is significant from a wetland, in my experience in particular. So,
We definitely would ensure that we wouldn't have any wood or any building materials within that 100-foot setback.
any other questions from the board?
Maybe some members of the public that are on Zoom that may want to comment on this. Opportunity to ask them. Are there members of the public hearing person? Raise your hand if you can. Ms. Murphy, Murphy? You do it yourself? Ms. Murphy, are you here on this matter?
I would think so, because her house is the next one down from the house on the corner. And what we were talking about just now is the fact that the back of this property does not overlap the Murphy's house,
So
the Murphy's property.
we might be having technology issues, but we're not discussing the variance. And that was what the public hearing is.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is just on the site plan. review.
Right, but the site plan
Yep.
is relevant to the size of the piece of property in relation to its siting of the house on that property and its relationship to the other houses in the neighborhood. For my own, for our interest, it's good to know the proportions relative to where this fits within the neighborhood.
So Bob, how would we hear any comment on Zoom?
We technically don't have to anymore because the executive order has been lifted. We have advertised the public hearing for the variance in advance of the executive order expiring. So, as you're not considering that, we have no obligation to hear anybody on Zoom with respect to the site plan. All meetings need to be in person.
But you were trying to solicit comments from somebody.
Well, there's some people on, I mean, I understand there's some confusion, but I don't know that our technology is. And I would suggest that, you know, any approval that is given with respect to the site plan and the dimensions or recommendation of zoning, that the parties will have an opportunity to appear at the zoning board.
I would recommend, strongly recommend to you in terms of your presentation to the zoning board, that you place this within the context of the surrounding neighborhood, identifying the houses across the street, to the side, and along Twisett Road that would be, if not direct abutters, at least nearby abutters, so people. Yeah, I think, you know, or a diagram. I mean, we were able to pull up on the map, you know, the
Yeah, I know
Wow.
exactly what you're referring to. So
you know,
we'll
a
be able
satellite
to
picture
show
can help too,
additional.
But I mean, I think most importantly is the plat map, because it will, I think, at least bring people to an understanding, because right now they look at it and say, how far back does this thing go? Because the current owner, I believe, owns the land that goes beyond your property.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Kirkman. I'm the person who's buying the property,
Right.
potentially. What it is now, the parcel goes right up to the head. I had done it, a surveying
Right.
on it. And it brings it right back to the corner of the property that I think his name is Frank Twarog owns.
Right,
On the
one on the
corner of
corner.
Maple. It doesn't go beyond that. So
Right.
that's one of the corners on the property.
Right, and that's, I think that'll be.
It doesn't go beyond that because I believe Mr. Baca owns all the way down
He
to the
does,
water.
and so I think that the question that I'm sure some of the neighbors had is,
Yeah.
what exactly are you buying within the context of that?
I'm
lot?
just purchasing that from parcel. I
Right,
guess it's
so
two
that's-
different
I think
parcels.
having that would address the concerns that, in the
Okay.
absence of any information,
Okay,
you know,
yeah.
that's clear, you know,
Yeah, it's 26,000 square
Yeah.
feet.
yeah, but again, I think if you put it in
I
there.
believe the whole parcel at the two parcels together are like 14 acres, I was told.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it goes
yeah.
all the way down to the water.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything further?
I think most would be whether or not you're.
To recommend the site plan as presented with,
Conditioned on the.
Right.
Abutters. to make that an opportunity.
right, with the recommendation to the applicant that you create that map that would make it as visually evident as possible as to where this is in relationship to the other houses in the neighborhood.
And I think I would just caveat that subject to EM signing off that the only location for the onsite wastewater treatment.
Oh, okay, yeah. So let's put that together. I'd like to put forth a motion to approve the recommendation to the zoning board of the existing site plan with conditions that it meets and the applicant is able to achieve Department of Environmental Management approval for the septic system in relation to the wetland, and the recommendation to the applicant that they create an overlay on the proposed site that includes the immediately adjacent houses on Twisett Road. And I think it also makes sense, the one that's on to the rise in the east of Maple Avenue. So does that work for you? So my friend Ben? Okay. So that's the motion. Could I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Great. Well, good luck. with the
Thank you
zoning.
very much, all the board members. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda, the applicant didn't realize they needed to be here in person. Say anything. Suggested that, call from the town council to the planning board. The establishment of two special revitalization. Purpose of the special revitalization district is so we can utilize tax increment finance prior to the statute. The Matacon area is Tappan corridor. We've thought about quite a bit. The second location is National Grid site. We would like buildings on the corner of Main and Water Street, and then down the corner of 99 Water Street and the tourist complex. The reason for that is that we expect that the tourist complex will be condos, 5-year. And potentially the tax increment financing that could be a substantial increase. And potentially stormwater or any other problems.
A little background for folks on the board. We're who's pretty much everybody. Ancient relic. The tourists are, in order to build it, they got historic tax credits, and it was established as apartments. So it's essentially owned by an entity. As soon as they those tax credits, the ability to get those tax credits, they had to keep it as apartments for 5 years. Once those 5 years are up, then it goes to condos, which is a completely different tax structure, as Bob has said. So that is a significant difference from what we first looked at when we were approving the tourist site as an apartment building, essentially. And we're fairly certain, although interestingly enough, I mean, I've talked to Chris Starr, who is the one of the prime developers, and they said that when they go from apartments to condos, it can be a great headache to the developer. So, you know, it's not a sure thing that they're going
No,
to go.
I mean, just to be clear, our development is not part of the tourist complex.
Right.
You're going to be Grady Sullivan. I mean, if you're over there, everything is individually metered. You know, I think that is, Chris with 99 Water Street might have a different business.
Right.
And there's no downside to creating special revitalization. All we're suggesting is these for individual condominium units. Tax revenue for the town would increase anything above the baseline is benefits.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems perfectly sensible, particularly given its location and the floodplain as well. So.
So
and the
Bob,
fact that it's raised.
the sole purpose of this designation is the tax.
Yeah, in order to for municipality to take advantage of tax increment financing, you first have to create a special revitalization district in as much as that we don't have a redevelopment authority. So this would take the place of that. But, you know, initially my thought was we gotta come first back to this, our financial advisors, bond
Great.
And do you have a sense of where the council is on this one?
for you.
Bob has had two lengthy and informative charrettes essentially on these, and we've, you know, Matthew, you have on them, but we've been, Bob has kept us abreast of this for really almost 2 years.
I actually shamed Matthew into having to attend the last one.
That's so wrong. But it is a wonderful and long-reaching concept that is really the bedrock of what a planning board is about and what a town should do. It's forward thinking, and particularly in light of the flood zone that we are in. So I mean, and it's thoughtful in terms of the existing residents. It's thoughtful in terms of the future of Warren. I mean, it checks all the boxes really for me.
Well, and I could just add that we had a conversation with IDOT last week. We asked them, if Market Street is in tip traffic improvement, to be repaved in the next 3 years. That we show that's what happened in that area in 14 years, that area is completely underwater. We asked them to work with us to establish a pilot program to look at situations like this. I think if you're updated across the state, there is something called the STIC grant through the Federal Highway Administration. We reached out to Senator Reed's office, Senator Reed, getting funding for some efforts funded this study. Friday afternoon, right after back and said they have money in place right now to do a pilot program with us to study this area, which would be the first time in the state that this has been looked at.
Wow.
I mean, one thing that we've identified is that, when we talk about sea level rise and impact to roads, nowhere in New England and almost nowhere in the United States are there any plans for adaptive strategies for roads. There's some in the Florida Keys, there's some in the Bayou area of Louisiana, but there isn't anything anywhere else. And so what we're suggesting is that we're identifying that these roads are going to be underwater for 14 years. What are we doing? I mean, we're just going to raise the road. What's going to happen to the houses on either side of it?
Right.
So that's what we want to look at. This next question of this study is, what is our adaptive road strategy? These roads have been identified by DOT to be some of the most vulnerable in the state, but the state doesn't have a strategy.
Right.
So I think it's all good because most municipalities, DOT don't have a symbiotic relationship. I'm not suggesting we do yet, but we're moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And we're having a conversation.
I was truly an idealist.
So, I mean, this is, and it was one of the questions that came up at the last workshop. Where's DOT on this? I can say that we've made some progress by engaging them. And I think, reaching out to the federal delegation kind of brings some pressure from that side. The Federal Highway Administration has helped us. To your point, this is a very replicable project, not just in Rhode Island, but
Yeah.
So could I move that we recommend to the town council the adoption of both of the revitalization zones?
Yeah, unless there's any,
Based on the fact that.
Yes.
which is what Ben just referred to is the basis by which we make all our decisions on the planning board, that it has to be in compliance with the planning board. I forgot my briefcase and the piece of paper that has it, but we'll get you one of those, Matthew. It's there's a series of points, and as you know, it is what I was referring to when I said it checks all the boxes for us because it meets all of the requirements of the comprehensive plan in terms of moving the town forward in a very positive way that takes into consideration both the flooding areas that like Market Street and potentially Water Street, and then also the area that in Metacom that's high enough so that it could serve as a place for a lot of these folks to move, or residents, not necessarily residents, but the residents. Okay. So in light of that, Mike has made based on the conditions that Ben mentioned, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Enthusiastically
Yes.
so.
That's fine.
And carrying you on our shoulders into the town council meeting, I might add. Sure.
Before
Yeah, there would be two special revitalizations districts. One would be as identified in the Marcus Metacom plan, that Metacom corridor. The second would be, and we'll provide the council with a map, would include the National Grid site that the town acquired, the tourist property, that corridor. Okay.
Great.
With that, agenda item 7B.
All right, and this is a concept plan review, AP 15B, Lot 33A, 611 Metacom Avenue. The owner is GCM Warren LLC. The applicant is AutoZone Parts, Inc., and we have a representative from the owner applicant.
Correct. Hi. Well,
They, I do, here and.
this is, like, sorry, I don't know. Yes. Our- Technically, all buildings are having this. And all, our project, so part of the parcel. That's why I say that it's like, any perspective. Parcel, but where
Oh, you know, that's the owner.
we are a business, on the parcel that's, there are a few easements on the property, not right away. We're trying to keep the loading, obviously, in the back of the building. My out plan for sure right now, I think it's a little aspirational, added spaces. Seven, down on the site. Trying to work out the fire truck, tractor trailer. On commercial way, but
Now, you're aware of the fact that what we just voted on was in fact includes this area, which is designated, we anticipate, should the town council go through with this, as
Yeah, I mean,
this
we will
mixed
not have
zone.
this conversation. I mean, unfortunately, our zoning changes are not in place yet, so we can't impose any of those design guidelines on him. However, to the extent that they need any kind of relief for parking, then we have dog and fight. And I believe that you have the ability to condition what the building looks like. I was shared with Neil that if this is going to look like a typical auto zone, I'm going to recommend being supportive of that. They want to make this look like the design guidelines that we anticipate addressing down the road, then I think. But just drop this. No disrespect to Neil or his client, this is exactly why I'm hurrying to get these zoning changes done, because if it's perceived that the highest and best use for Medicom is to have the third auto parts store, a mile, another store, and across the street, or an oil change. And people are passing.
And yeah, we have had numerous conversations about it. I can't speak tonight. But we're obviously not here, but areas we perspective are time space and that's the one. The second issue we have is so right now
Say that again, please.
sorry, right now
81.
that's correct, yeah. And before I here, that whole site, we've got I call it skate. So it's obviously fairly well. It's a covered. But obviously it's we're trying to get it and fix the strip to the west. That's national bridge.
Oh.
And everything else is
So I would just offer that just a concept, and this person represents AutoZone. This can come in under unified development review, so potentially you would be the sole arbitrator of the approval to the extent that the relief required. And I would suggest that talking about compromising on what the design looks like.
Well, we also, I mean, this is one of the least attractive proposals we've seen in a long time in terms of impervious surface. The landscaping is a couple of green blotches. You know, I would, you know, if knowing where we're going and also what we've received from other developers a much more detailed landscape plan that creates a sense of place that is not simply a strip mall. And what this looks like right now is a great big concrete parking lot with a concrete block building in the middle of it. So, I mean, I think that that's, as a planning board, we would look at that, and it is within our purview to say that we would want to see landscaping that would at least allow this to fit within this proposed zone, the Metacom zone. Because right now, to me, this looks like something you could slap on Route 6, and that's exactly diametrically opposed to where we're going as a town in terms of planning board decisions up until now, and certainly the planning board's vision for the future is, put forth by Mr. Rulli. So, I mean, I think that's what we're here to tell you. Here are all the red flags that we see. So before this, this is just a concept review, and this is why we do it, because then you're not wasting your time coming in with a full-blown presentation.
That's exactly. Having kids are- At this point, I don't think they're quite sharing this one, but
Right now, you have a deck seat, but right now you have someone to type in. You have a deck seat right now, but you're also one to type in.
I appreciate that. And this is really more here. Some of the other. I'm not sure.
Well, one other thing before we go there, the number of parking spaces, this seems like a lot of parking spaces. Is this, are this many required by law?
He's doing like what
The request, yeah. Now, do we have some leeway in that?
Well, if either you or the zoning board were to give some relief to that, because the nature of both businesses is pretty quick in and out.
Right.
But at the same time, another concern that I have is that what the impact of traffic is. I mean, I see in the morning how Dunkin' Donuts really messes up traffic in that area. To the extent that there's cars going north and they can't get into Dunkin' Donuts. Not suggesting that the hours sync up, but I mean, I think those are all things that need to be taken into consideration, particularly if you're suggesting it's an in and out business.
Now, is this, so does the applicant own the CVS?
Yes. it's
Land
the
and the
applicant owns both parcels.
and the CVS is going to stay there? That's the,
Yes. And again, the applicant, my client.
Right. Right.
Yeah, the CPS would stay. Probably less than that.
so I mean, what I would say is a way of, I mean, there's way more parking spots in the CVS than I can ever imagine. If you had that many people in there, you couldn't move.
They can't steal. I mean, that's. the
No,
problem.
I understand that, but I would think that one of the things that they could come forward with is to make an already ugly place a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, given the fact that the applicant owns the CVS. So, there could be a give and take here in terms of the appearance of the existing CVS, given the fact that your client owns both areas. It's a sense of, how you want this gateway to Warren to look. And we're trying to reverse a lot of bad decisions made by people who sat here
I just
many
wanna be
moons ago.
clear for the record that his client would be a potential leasehold interest. The owner of the property is not represented. That's the proof from that property. Deal is representing AutoZone,
Right.
who's a potential tenant. I've expressed what our plans are with the that bought the property right after they bought the property. And, you know, I've not been shy about my concerns.
Go ahead, Mike.
So, you know, the most radical thing here would be to move the building forward on the lot and put the parking behind, which is what we're looking for along here. So maybe you want to at least talk to your client about whether they want to take a look at the draft form-based code and at least get a sense of what we're looking for, which would be to move the building towards Metacom, put the parking in the back.
And that's the conversation I had, is that, you know, the cookie cutter, I know that this, you know, you've got a business model that says this works. That probably is not going to work. In terms of approval.
Right. And I mean, you know, I've seen McDonald's take a different approach. So I mean, we're not talking about something that is, the company has a particular brand approach that they, you know, they like, but that doesn't mean that.
Not perfect, but if you look at the Valvoline oil change across the street, that is not the most offensive building on Metacom. I mean, it's got some architectural details.
Have they seen Water Rower? I mean, you know, that to me is the, and but it's something to look at because that
It's obviously.
and it represents, you know, a completely different look from what we've had. I mean, the thing that was there before was like a blockhouse that you would have seen on the beaches of Normandy, you know? And that's what Metacom has in effect become over the years. So,
Try to get a sense of what their actual part. So
I mean, I think that, not to cut you off, but I think that's what we're trying to convey is the aesthetic is more important than parking. If there's no compromise on the aesthetic, then this is going to be a problem.
yeah.
Yeah, but you can just add. And again, demonstrate the variance for.
I wouldn't mind it if, Bob, could you share that last development landscape plan with them from the apartments, you know, the fellow who came in, I mean, because again, planters are not going to do it. It's going to have to be serious landscaping, the kind of stuff that, you know, that establishes itself and grows over the course of time.
And it might be that, you know, beyond AutoZone, that the property owner needs to address CVS at the same time. I mean, we don't want to have,
Right.
you know, a same parcel and then we have an oasis here and then we still have.
But again, a give and take here could, you know, would I think be, we're not unreasonable. We're not saying, don't do this. We're saying, how can this work within the context of the vision and in terms of improving the appearance of Metacom Avenue? And truth be told, this is not a big deal. Putting in landscaping is not an unreasonable request. And frankly, it's something that people just didn't care about in the past. And the result was a whole lot of ugliness.
Right, and sorry, like.
Okay.
Um,
I kind of joked that you're looking down probably one actually is that building. And so I think for me, Waterford actually is a good manufacturing facility. There's building things in there, and, you know, if you can take that, another great example is what take, in or something new on East Main Road. That's what I want to see.
Well, I actually sent my client, actually,
Yeah.
$1 million. One of those buildings. You know, plywood is important to them. But that, plywood material,
And you can teach friends something to make it look
Yeah, it's a thought.
nice from when you're walking down the street and obviously the back, you can't see or any of them. You know, there's- Yeah, that's the forward, you have to start somewhere and just.
Oh, one other quick comment.
Sure.
So I think you also have to pay attention to the signage. Clearly, that's another problem with Metacom Avenue. It's the overwhelming amount of unattractive signage. So sooner or later, I'm going to see that. That's right.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm gonna labor the point, but for this to work, it requires a lot of lines. Leading the use.
Yeah, I had a comment more than a question. Do you know in your discussions with a client whether or not they've started negotiations on the lease?
I don't have. Into that, I can do that.
The reason I mention that is if this project goes ahead, some of the requirements and suggestions that this board makes is going to have a material economic impact on what the owner of the property is going to have to do to satisfy those. And that's going to impact significantly what the lease rent is going to be. So when you're talking about this, it's a good idea to keep in mind what these kinds of modifications are going to cost. But the, I mean, it'll either make or break the deal.
No, it's a good point.
And I definitely take that. Jim has a background, professional background in commercial real estate and leasing. So
Yeah,
key element.
Right, I think it would be helpful for a representative of the property owner as well as the farm, so. Just because they need to hear what our mission is and what the concerns are. And better productive for everyone. Yeah.
Anything?
It's a sea of asphalt.
Yeah, huge access.
I mean, again, that's something we're trying to eliminate. I mean, so more advanced BMPs, you know, pervious materials are all things I think that need to be considered. And to Neil's point, you know, perhaps if there is an agreement and compromise in terms of the design, the siting of the building, that they need less parking, then that gives them more opportunity to incorporate better stormwater management.
So in terms of the negotiation and compromise, I would hope at the end, compromise would be a lot of everything.
Well, that's where we have, you know, very clear authority. In some of these other things that we're a bit like supplicants, you know, because there is a certain right that they have given the current zoning and also the current parking requirements. That said, we have some leeway in that, but with the variances, we can absolutely say, you know, it's like this fellow who came before us, we can simply say, no, you can't have the variances. We don't want that. Because they're in there for a reason to prevent, you know, people from.
And the stormwater is significant in terms of the impact on the Kickapoo River. That was the whole purpose of that. The rest of it. And I think, you know, as a concept plan, you and I have had this conversation now, your client may be averse to it, but I think before you get to a formal application, continue this conversation with your client and the property owner being represented. That's, you know, quite honestly, to put a pig on this side and leave CBS looking the way it does, it's not good. It's not with anybody's problem.
Yeah, that part makes sense.
No, and that's the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's been proven that when these places look better, they're perceived more positively by the community. So there's it's hard to measure. You know, I used to be in advertising, and that was always the question, well, how well does that ad work? You know, there's the perception that can definitely improve the community feeling for that place and drive traffic in. So it does make sense to consider aesthetics, particularly in light of the fact that this whole town is, partially through the efforts of Bob, you know, becoming more and more aware of this and the importance of this. So,
If I could go back to the purpose.
sure.
So, right now, we're at 82. And can't make it. That said, down to that.
Yeah, you could put in
Some reduction.
green spaces. Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I mean, I think that we need to have a better understanding what the stormwater looks like, because we know from another project that you were involved in, you know, with respect to both the sanitary and the stormwater on Metacom, at different size piping, and that we might have volume flow issues that.
But we're actually fine.
Those are obviously closer together.
Yeah, I know, it's surprising.
And the whole grading.
Yeah, no, and again, I mean, I think the purpose of this was.
There's going through the drive-through.
No, I appreciate that. And then again, that is-
Yeah, there's not gonna be a lot of sanitary. You agree with that?
that part should be solved.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I appreciate the work that you've done on this, and this is, I appreciate the fact that you've come in for the concept review, because I mean, this is really, the intent of this is to have the hard questions asked and ideally to come back with something that, you know, is a compromise that everybody can agree on when it comes time to making the decision. So, are there any other concerns or?
I would just share the board's.
Thank you very much.
Great, appreciate your time.
So
Thank
you
you.
earned your salary tonight.
Yeah. I-
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, right.
We're gonna hold everyone back.
Thank you. All right then.
No administrative matter. Matter before.
Anything going on with anyone that they want to share?
So I had a question. Are we going to go back to hard copies of the meeting materials?
Yes.
We are.
I mean, I'll have maps just like I had tonight, but.
But, you know, these things, when you print them all, they're
No, I mean, I made hard copies of the maps. We got kind of caught in it. We weren't sure whether there was going to be an executive order continued or
oh,
not.
got it.
So just for everyone's purposes, moving forward, all meetings are in person. We don't have a requirement to Zoom meetings anymore. We probably will, planning, zoning, and town council stream to YouTube, but there'll be no public comment or participation by any board members. If you're not going to be here, you need to be here. Right, should be able to be here.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, well, motion to adjourn. Have a second? Second from Mr. Patterson. Thank you all. See you next month.
To be aware, from August 11th to the 18th, I will not be available.
Are you going to be rolling through Iceland?
No, I'm going to be in Steamboat Springs racing.